He says stop fishing for boats and find the deep. There are promises for ocean that we have to keep. Oh, turn the handle, Randall, let the drag just scream. Living out of Cabo San Lucas fishing dream. They hate people with suntans and smiles on their face, but we're finding our freedom in this liquid space. Turn off the news, they're all lying to you anyway. We're out here killing fish at the breaking of the day. He's got a hot dog on a stick and a story to tell. Navigating through the swells of this coastal hell. He says, I wish I was a California sea lion too, because they have more rights than me.
Oh yeah, they do. Absolutely. So thanks to Promar Ahi USA.com, we're got our guests today, Michael Folks and Kevin from Limitas Rods, and we're going full speed on Chapter 8 of the History of Sport Fishing. Before we get into all this stuff that we got going on today, though, how bitchin', I'm going to use the word bitchin', how bitchin' is it to see Inside Sport Fishing back on YouTube, all the old episodes? It's so bitchin', Michael.
Yeah, thanks, David. It's pretty cool. Every single episode of Inside Sport Fishing is now on YouTube, and it's streaming live 24/7 every day of the week. And it's about 20-minute segments back to back to back, and we switch locations every time. It's on a random play list, so you don't know what you're going to get. Big marlin, fly fishing, surf casting. It's for me personally, getting to look at these old shows that I haven't looked at in probably 20 or 25 years. It's just amazing to look at all the captains and crews and locations and how young a lot of us were back in the day.
I just watched the episode where I was on the Ocean Odyssey. I had actual black hair and a black mustache back then. It was crazy.
You're fishing out of the wheelhouse window.
I had just taken we caught 500 yellowfin tuna from 4 in the morning till 8:30. It was the most epic bite ever. And it was supposed to be a 4-day trip. It ended it a day and a half early because we just had way too many fish. But that was cool to see that old episode. Gang, if you guys have not checked this out, Elliot is working with Michael and Jim Packard from Castle Rock, right?
Yeah, Lionsgate.
Sorry, Jim.
That's all right.
And they put together this unbelievable package for all of us to watch. And then they go with, not only is it on a loop and it's playing all day, but then there's also episodes available too. It's just amazing what Elliot's able to put together, gang. So if you ever have a chance, you have a couple minutes where you don't have something to watch, you got to check this out on YouTube. Just full speed looping all the time. Stop on the episode you want to see. Everything's available right now. And Michael, you just told me in a week you guys have already gained 500 subscribers. That is a huge number.
I don't know anything about that stuff, but it's exciting to see people enjoying it and watching it. You can see how many people are watching it at the same time you're watching it. And if you guys do, if you have time, take a look at it, subscribe, like it. It'll help us a lot, especially in these initial stages, to have a lot of engagement. So please, if you just take a minute and log on to YouTube, check out Inside Sport Fishing, subscribe and like. It'll be a huge boost for us as they start, like you said, Kevin, as they start to build up the algorithms.
Smash that like button, share and subscribe.
Roger. And any comments, love to hear your comments about it, good, bad, or indifferent. But for me personally, it's really a thrill to see that series brought back to life in such a way that it's free. It's all 100% free. You don't have to pay a dime. So rock and roll.
Yeah, it's so cool to see how the industry has evolved. And you see all these guys that were young captains and deckhands that have become captains now. And you're like, seeing all this stuff. I was talking to Mike Lum yesterday, and he's like, how in the hell did they do this? How did they put this thing together where it's on a loop all the time? I go, that's our buddy. That's Elliot. He's the master of doing this stuff. It's pretty bizarre.
I thought it was really cool too, because like, for example, Jig Chucker's Ball, it's like a 5-part series. So there's like 5 half-hour shows. And if you're into surface iron and big bluefin tuna on long rods, you're going to love it. But, a lot of guys never fished bluefin, so they don't care. So rather than just go episode in order, we've just put a random selector in there. So you can go from the, Jig Chucker's Ball to, fishing on Midway Island to Long Range with Frank. We did a great tribute to Rollo in there. And then your Ocean Odyssey shows back in there. I saw one with Todd the other day, and I went, oh, this is so cool, because those shows are 20, 25 years old, and yet they're still evergreen.
Absolutely. The one on the Sun Fun, El Nino 1991 with Todd Manser, that is a classic game. You got to check it out. Back when Todd had a lot of hair.
We all had a little bit of hair then.
And he was very, very young back then. Kevin, it's so cool that you're getting to experience what us on the West Coast grew up. Michael Folks was like the guy for us, and all we all wanted as captains was an opportunity to be on Inside Sport Fishing. You felt like, I made it. I'm on Inside Sport Fishing now.
Hey, I feel the same way, Dave. I've made it. I'm now on Your Saltwater Guide.
Oh my God.
Well, that, not to jump ahead, but in the episode that we're going to go through today, all these, I'm kind of in that feeling right now. All these names that we're going to hear and talk about today, like that's those guys for me. Like, these are names and legends that I've, someday I'm going to grow up and be like, insert name here. And it's like, I'm doing it now. And it really is a dream come true, and I'm just getting started, so to speak. So it's great.
It is really true. And Kevin, I had so much great feedback about our show last week. People are just raving about you and your comments and some of the things you said afterwards. And it gives me chills. The guy said, what you've done with the history of sport fishing is given the sport, I don't know, how did he say it? You've done a tribute to the sport for all mankind for eternity. It's never been put together like this before. And he said, I just can't turn it off, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you saying that as well. And, the way that I look at it is I've not always been very open or easy to talk about some of the stuff that I went through. But, I'm at a point now where if I can share my story and it helps one family or it helps one veteran, my temporary tears keep somebody else around, mission accomplished.
Absolutely. And I think it helps purge a lot of the stress off of you too, by opening up and letting it out. Like you said, when we started that thing last week, he goes, listen, I'm a Marine. We don't cry. So don't expect any freaking tears out of my eyes.
What are these feelings? What are these emotions?
What are we talking about? Yeah, it was really, I thank you for last week. You were just phenomenal, Dave. And Kevin, especially at the end when Dave bounced out of there because he had tears in his eyes.
Oh, yeah. And I had to go pick up my kids at the airport, and they're having a ball down here in Cabo, and I'm going to go spend some more time with them on the beach this afternoon. But right now, gang, let's watch a little bit of Chapter 8. Kind of describe to us what Chapter 8 is about just for a minute, Michael, and then we'll get into it.
Let's just roll it.
Okay, let's go.
No spoiler alerts.
Here we go.
Okay.
Check it out. Chapter 8, The History of Sport Fishing.
It's a good one.
Remember the time I took the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Terry Bradshaw to Key West, Florida in quest of a big tarpon. Those 4 Super Bowl rings that Terry had didn't make much of an impression on the tarpon. Never cast for a tarpon before, huh?
Never been tarpon.
You're in a thrill to hook one of the greatest game fish in the world. Here comes some over here. Nice school coming across. Get him. Move it. Get their attention.
Pick it up, put it on again. Wait a minute.
He's coming. He's got it. There you go. That's the way to go, baby.
This is the History of Sport Fishing. Chapter 8. Fly fishing explodes in salt waters.
There they are, tailing bonefish, the wariest, fightingest, fastest fury with fins. The Latin name of the bonefish means white fox. but that's an understatement. It should have been white lightning. He's one of the shyest creatures on Earth, bar none, and that streamlined torpedo body is really powered with jet propulsion.
The earliest known reference to saltwater fly fishing in North America was made in a letter written in 1764 from a man by the name of Rodney Home, who worked for the governor of the West Florida colony. In his note, he briefly mentions the saltwater trout and fine fishing to be had in the area on the fly. In 1833, Jerome Smith wrote a book entitled Natural History of the Fisheries of Massachusetts, in which he describes fishing along Cape Cod for salters, sea-run trout, and fly fishing for striped bass. By the mid to late 1800s, men on both coasts had made some successful early attempts at using delicate fly rods and tackle for school-sized saltwater species. As fishing in the region of Florida's west coast and the Florida Keys gained in popularity, a group of innovative men began to use fly tackle with greater and greater success in salt waters. They transformed what had formerly been a freshwater-dominated practice used for taking relatively small species of fish into what remains today one of the fastest growing segments of the sport, true saltwater fly fishing. Florida's vast open expanses of crystal clear, shallow waters and year-round temperate weather were near ideal conditions for the use of surface flies, and these early pioneers were quick to push the limits, testing their gear against every available local species. One local legend, A.W. Dimmock, had had great success using conventional tackle for many of these species, including the massive tarpon. But it was not until the early 1900s that he began using fly tackle in earnest for the silver kings. His books and articles written at the time presented an intimate and captivating glimpse into the earliest years of the sport. In his most noted work, The Book of the Tarpon, he saves the last chapter for describing the thrill of taking the great silver kings on the fly. He begins by talking about the beauty and tranquility of the scenery when trout fishing, but then quickly reveals his preferences.
To one who has known the tarpon, the feeble efforts of the salmon to live up to its own reputation are saddening. The tarpon meets every demand the sport of fishing can make. He fits the light fly rod as no trout ever dreamed of doing, and leaps high, 100 times for every once that a brook trout clears the surface.
He goes on and describes in great detail the pure joy and challenges of battling these giant fish on light tackle, and what it takes to be successful catching them. Interestingly, he saves his most important lesson for the last few pages of the book. In earlier chapters, he had given multiple accounts of taking many fish over the years with the use of conventional gear, heavy line, and rods. Like most early fishermen of the time, Dimmock and others initially believed the prolific populations of these magnificent fish could never be diminished. Even though its oily flesh was considered unpalatable, they would often bring fish into the docks for display and photo ops, knowing full well that they would not be eating it at the end of the day. As daylight faded and the pictures and handshakes at the dock scaffolding came to a close, some fish were processed into animal feed, while the others were just left for the sharks. But it seems the more time Dimmock spent pursuing such a worthy adversary, the more he came to respect his opponent and understood that killing such a valiant warrior was not a fitting end for such a remarkable fish. On the last pages of his book, he cautioned his readers, saying,
Don't carry a gaff. Don't murder your game. To wantonly slay the beautiful, harmless creatures that have so contributed to your pleasure is not only cruel, but it is unfair to your fellow sportsman. The fish can be measured without harming him, and the cube of his length in feet divided by 2 gives his weight in pound as nearly as is worthwhile. The Book of the Tarpon, A.W. Dimmick, 1912.
It would take several more decades before the routine practice of releasing tarpon and many other local species of fish would truly take hold. But Dimmick's words still ring true today, over a century later. Dimmick's big game fishing tales would draw many to South Florida's waters, but it was the local guides who would truly create the groundswell of dedicated followers fly fishing would soon enjoy across the entire country. In 1930, the Islamorada Fish Guides Association was formed, and over the next several decades, its members introduced the intricacies of saltwater fly fishing to thousands of new fans from around the world.
Come along with me now, down to the Florida Keys, to the little village of Islamorada, some 70 miles below Miami. We turn off the overseas highway at a familiar sign, Captain Jimmy Albright, famous bonefish guide. And here's Frankie Albright, Jimmy's wife, a famous bonefish guide herself. She can pole a boat or cast a fly with the best of them.
These dedicated men and women of what would later become known as the Florida Keys Fishing Guides Association pushed the envelope, trying out new gear and fishing methods, and worked tirelessly, teaching the folks who wanted to give the new sport a try. George Hummel Jr. was one of the leaders of the association, and he and the other members were also strong advocates for early conservation and fought hard for the newly formed Everglades National Park to ban any commercial harvest within the park's boundaries. With a newly completed highway down to the Florida Keys, the guides became busier than ever as angling enthusiasts began filling the local lodges and marinas. Charter boats that once sat idle during the off-season were now finding themselves booked months in advance, and the local economies boomed. Fly fishing in the hundreds of square miles of Florida's backcountry waters of the 10,000 Islands region of the Florida Everglades National Park and the nearby Florida Keys was unlike anything most anglers had ever experienced. And these locally born and raised expert guides were indispensable in producing fish and the tourism dollars that came with them. In 1934, guides and fishermen in the nearby region of West Palm Beach, Florida, joined with their town's leaders to form the West Palm Beach Fishing Club. Having seen what had happened on Florida's west coast, they knew that the rich fishing grounds surrounding their eastern shores could be a major draw to tourism as well. These forward-looking men and women realized that by supporting the growth of sport fishing, they could not only help grow the sport, but also greatly aid in the region's painfully slow economic recovery from the ravages of the Great Depression.
The region was coming out of the Depression, and right across the street was the main charter boat fleet in the area. And Henry Flagler had been bringing down tourists from the Northeast for quite a while, and then the Depression came, and a lot of these small business operators that had charter boats across the street at the city marina were really struggling. And so city leaders got together and concocted an idea to create an organization that not only helped the struggling charter boat fleet, but provided a boost to the local economy. Right from the start, the fishing club was very successful and very engaged in the community.
By the 1950s and early 60s, an elite group of South Florida guides were once again leading the way as saltwater fly fishing continued to grow like wildfire. Men and women like Bill and bonefish Bonnie Smith, Jimmy Albright and his wife Frankie, brothers Raleigh and Holly Hollenbeck, Jack Brothers, Cecil Green, Walter and Buck Stark, Harry Pinder, Billy Knowles, George Hummel Jr., Tommy Gifford, Cecil Keith, Stu App, Flip Pallett, and Chico Fernandez. All of these men and women were highly accomplished pioneers in their day. It is notable that two women, Bonnie Smith and Frankie Albright, made their own early marks thanks to their talent and determination. Both ladies were married to elite guides, but they were never satisfied being mates on their husbands' boats. Instead, each of these ladies spent years honing their skills and building their knowledge of the emerging sport until they themselves became highly sought-after guides in their own right. A native of Georgia, Bonnie Smith had long had an interest in fly fishing when she moved to Florida and began learning the sport under the tutelage of Florida Keys guide Preston Pender. Bonnie progressed quickly and soon became a guide herself. Her reputation as a local expert fishing for tarpon, and especially stocking the skittish bonefish, earned her the nickname Bonefish Bonnie, and won her the respect of master fly fisherman Joe Brooks, who she guided to his first ever bonefish. She would go on to marry another legendary Keys guide, Bill Smith, who held the IGFA world record for the first officially recorded bonefish ever captured on a fly rod. Frankie Albright was another lady angler who stood out among the Keys guides. Like Bonnie, she had also married an established guide. Her husband Jimmy had been guiding for years when Frankie began running her own excursions. She fished for many inshore species, but was especially well known for her skills guiding for bonefish and tarpon. She understood her quarry and could pull a boat as well as any man. Her talent and determination made her one of baseball legend Ted Williams' favorite guides. Each of these men and women offered unique skills, brought leadership to the sport, and helped pave the way in the new trend of saltwater fly fishing those first few decades. Another major factor in the rising awareness for the emerging sport would be the formation of early fishing clubs and professional fishing associations across the southeastern United States. These new groups would bring together the very best experts the sport had to offer, help establish early angling ethical practices, and serve as teachers to all who came to fish their local waters. In 1929, the Rod and Reel Club of Miami Beach was formed and included the first ever separate fly fishing division within its competitions that very first year. They also established the first set of official rules for saltwater fly angling, including that no leader heavier than 12-pound test was to be used and no protective wire or heavy shock retarding monofilament tippets were allowed. In 1935, the club would go on to create the Miami Metropolitan Fishing Tournament, which would become the largest of its kind in the world, and whose rule book would become a standard policy for many tournaments to follow. Local Islamorada guides and captains were the primary individuals responsible for starting the famous Islamorada Fishing Club in 1950. The club has a long history of promoting conservation and responsible fishing traditions, as well as ethical practices to assure the sport for future generations. The IFC became instrumental in the formation of the rules and regulations for the Everglades National Park. Along with these large clubs and guide organizations, a few determined individuals also did a great deal on their own to advance saltwater fly fishing across the country. 3 such men were already established icons in their own professions, and when they discovered a mutual love for fly fishing in the saltwaters off Florida, they were immediately hooked on the new sport, and fishing would bring them together as both steadfast friends and fellow competitors for decades to come. The first of these men, who was already a noted outdoor writer and a virtual living encyclopedia of fishing knowledge, was author Joe Brooks. Joe had been born in Maryland and spent much of his youth as a fly fisherman in lakes and streams. He wrote for leading outdoor magazines like Field and Stream and was the outdoor editor for the Baltimore Sun. He also served on the board of directors for the Metropolitan Miami Fishing Tournament. Joe's fishing adventures would take him all over the world, and his 10 books on fly fishing are still considered by many to be must-reads of the sport. Joe was a consummate gentleman and loved teaching newcomers about the sport. The International Game Fish Association placed him in its Hall of Fame and would name him as the man who did more to popularize and expand fly fishing than any other individual. Joe was also a mentor and a friend of a young man who would go on to become one of the top fly fishermen to ever live, Bernard Lefty Cray. Cray credits Brooks for introducing him to fly fishing, encouraging him to start writing about the sport, and getting him one of his first jobs in the fishing industry, working for the Miami Herald newspaper. Joe's friend and fellow master fly fisherman, Lee Wolf, once said of Joe, "I think the overriding thing about Joe was his enthusiasm. He loved it as few men have ever loved fishing. He made you feel that way when he wrote about it. He was an honest man, and his thrills when he was fishing were real. I think his readers felt that." Joe passed away in 1972 after suffering a massive heart attack while fishing in Montana. Some of his closest friends later remarked that Joe would have wanted folks to remember him just that way, leaving this world with a fly rod in his hand. Kurt Gowdy concluded a memorial tribute to Mr. Brooks by saying his style with a fly rod was only exceeded by his grace as a human being. The second legend in this notable threesome was another man Joe Brooks taught to fly fish in salt waters, baseball great Theodore Samuel Williams. Williams was also known as the Splendid Splinter and the Thumper for his incredible .400 batting average during his 2-decade career with the Boston Red Sox. He is still widely acknowledged as the purest hitter baseball has ever seen, and was also a self-proclaimed fishaholic. Along with being a baseball legend, Williams served as a Marine aviator in 2 wars. As proud as he was of those accomplishments, he would often tell people that serving and playing baseball were his day jobs and that fishing was his life. Williams would travel to the Florida Keys and many other fishing destinations around the world during baseball's off-season. Wherever he fished, he sought out the best guides, hungry for their knowledge. They would often talk late into the night about anything and everything that had to do with fishing. He was known for being a perfectionist, and his dedication to the sport earned him the respect of the locals wherever he fished. Ted met Joe Brooks in the Florida Keys during the 1950s, and the two men became best friends. Joe was generous with his knowledge and enjoyed the intense but friendly competition they shared on the water. Williams read every one of Joe's books on fly fishing and would go on to write several books of his own. John Underwood co-authored a book with Williams entitled Ted Williams Fishing the Big Three, about the joys of fishing for tarpon, bonefish, and Atlantic salmon. Ted introduced many other sports stars to the sport, like Masters Tournament and PGA champion Sammy Snead. And would also debut his own signature line of fishing tackle, boats, and motors in conjunction with Sears, Roebuck & Company. He was inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame in 1966. And in 2000, Williams was also inducted into the IGFA Fishing Hall of Fame, joining running back Jim Brown and pitcher Carl Hubble as being one of only 3 men to have ever been inducted into 2 professional sports Halls of Fame.
When this one was taken in to be weighed, he hit the scale at 128.5 pounds. Not bad for a 12-pound test rig.
It was Ted's pure passion for fishing that led him to meet the man who would become the third musketeer, Charles C. Ebbets. Charlie Ebbets was a renowned photographer and a board of directors member of the Metropolitan Miami Fishing Tournament for over a decade. Ebbets had become famous for his amazing promotional work across the country, his most iconic image being that of 11 ironworkers having lunch sitting on a suspended beam above Manhattan in 1932. This is just one of hundreds of his photos that have been featured in magazines and newspapers around the world. As an early practitioner of saltwater fly fishing himself, Ebbets was known to keep a tackle box and at least 2 rods and 2 cameras in the back seat of his press car at all times. When asked about this habit, Charlie commented, "I never want to miss a chance to take a good picture or catch a good fish." He was seldom on the water without his camera, and his work was widely used to promote the sport's growth. His pictures virtually filled the pages of newspapers and magazines, including the Miami Daily News, Outdoors Unlimited, Florida Outdoors, National Geographic, National Park Service brochures, and the famous annual yearbook for the Miami Metropolitan Fishing Tournament. Charlie also did promotional work for many of the major manufacturers within the fishing industry, including Orvis, Shakespeare, Mercury Motors, and many others. Having spent much of his life fishing Florida's backcountry salt flats and Lake Okeechobee, he was an acknowledged expert amongst his peers, and he once taught General, soon-to-be President Dwight D. Eisenhower the secrets of casting topwater plugs for Florida's famous black bass. Charlie shot many of the pictures used by Joe Brooks in his hundreds of fishing articles for magazines and newspapers, so it was natural that he recommended Charlie to Ted as the go-to guy when Mr. Williams wanted some photographs taken for his upcoming book on fly fishing, along with promotional shots for his new line of tackle. During this era, Ebbets was the man best known for promoting the growth of sport fishing with his camera, as was Joe Brooks with his pen. There was a third great communicator, Kurt Gowdy, who led the way in the medium of television. Kurt Gowdy was born in Wyoming in 1919. He was raised fishing and hunting with his father and developed a lifelong love for fishing from the time he got his first fly rod at the age of 8. His professional career in radio and television broadcasting spanned over 60 years, beginning in 1949, when he was chosen as the voice of the New York Yankees. He would go on to become the announcer for the Boston Red Sox for the next 15 years, and then transition into television for the next 4 decades.
Another season is underway at Fenway Park as our Red Sox break onto the field. 1-1 to Williams. Everybody quiet now here at Fenway Park after they gave him a standing ovation of 2 minutes, knowing that this is probably his last time at bat. 1 out, nobody on, last of the 8th inning. Jack Fisher into his windup. Here's the pitch. Williams swings, and there's a long drive to deep right. That ball is going, and it is gone. A home run for Ted Williams in his last time at bat in the major league.
A good baseball announcer can make that game live in somebody's mind.
There's a long drive. Ball's it deep, deep. It is gone. He did it. He did it. I've been lucky over the years to sit in on big events. This has to be, I think, my supreme thrill in broadcasting tonight. Kurt Gowdy here for NBC, thanking you all for looking in. Keep listening, keep watching. Thank you.
In 1963, Gowdy came up with an idea for a pilot show for network television about the all-American pastimes of fishing and hunting. He invited Joe Brooks to join him as part of a 2-man trout fishing team that would travel to Argentina and challenge and film that country's best fishermen for international bragging rights. The 20-minute segment aired on the Wide World of Sports in 1965 and was an immediate hit. It spun into the American Sportsman series and would feature movie stars, sports heroes, and even presidents on hunting expeditions and fishing trips across the globe.
There he is, left rigger. Left rigger, left rigger. He's coming again. He's coming again. There he comes, here he comes. He got it. Look ahead. Hit him. Got him on. Nice one, look at him jump. Hey, he's out. He's jumping. Nice one, man.
The fishing segments were some of the show's biggest hits, and over the next 2 decades, Kurt Gowdy would host over 200 episodes and brought his love for the outdoors into American living rooms for millions to enjoy. His pioneering work, promoting fish and habitat conservation, was a big part of his message and played an essential role in the success of many organizations founded in the mid-20th century who are still continuing that mission today. Mr. Gowdy is also believed to be the only man inducted into a total of 20 Halls of Fame, including sports, broadcasting, fishing, and conservation. As news articles, books, and television shows helped the popularity of fly fishing and saltwater grow, the many new anglers coming into the sport exposed serious limitations to how traditional fly fishing gear performed in the rough conditions of the corrosive saltwaters during the period from the 1930s through the 50s. Fly fishing gear, which had originally been designed for much smaller freshwater species, was fragile and easily broken when challenged by larger saltwater fish. Hooks were thin, they rusted easily, and often just broke on the bigger fish. Silk lines had replaced horsehair back in 1908, and they were a vast improvement, but still tangled easily even if anglers performed the required tedious maintenance of daily stripping, rinsing, and then drying the line on open spools of line winders after use in the salt waters. Just prior to World War II, some advances began to emerge with the transition from the process of harvesting flax and linen and then painstakingly weaving it into fishing line. The first nylon line was introduced by DuPont in 1938. Nylon still had problems with holding memory and often failed to form secure knots. In 1953, Cortland Line Company debuted the Cortland 333, a non-sinkable fly line made out of synthetic braided nylon core material. fly anglers no longer had to worry about their lines becoming waterlogged after a couple of hours of fishing, and dressing and drying of lines became obsolete. By the late 1950s, a whole new generation of fly lines was being offered by line manufacturers, including Cortland, Ashaway, Shakespeare, Gladding, Newton, and many others. This offered anglers many options to choose from, but it also created a problem for consistency in line weights
And that being
measurements.
said, gang, we can't do this show without our great sponsors over at Promar. I want to show you this cool video, and then we'll get into talking with Michael and Kevin real quick. But check this out. And we're getting ready to go do a little lingcod fishing today, so I'm going to use some of this 60-pound fluorocarbon, the GT4. Super abrasion resistant. It's going to handle those big teeth on those lingcod. We're going to drop down some live deception jigs, see if we can't get a couple of nibbles. We will let you know later, but gang, you must have some of this GT4 fluorocarbon connected between your braided line and your lure. Somewhere between your braided line and your lure, you're going to want to have some fluorocarbon. Super important. So check it out. GT4 fluorocarbon. Go to Promar Ahi USA. When you're over there, put in the code YSWG and the number 20, and that'll save you 10% on your next order of GT. Or you can just use that QR code at the bottom of the screen right under Michael, and you guys can save 15% on all your orders. Whatever you guys decide you need from Promar, they're a great sponsor of the program, and without them, we can't do this show every day. So Michael, Jolene kind of had a cool comment she made. Did you see that? She was on the airplane with you 1997, quite a few years ago. You're going to Midway.
She was on the plane with us to Midway.
That's what it says.
Really?
Hey, Michael, in 1997, I was on a plane with 48 of us to Kona for an outrigging canoe race, and you and your inside sport fishing crew were on the same flight. You were headed to Midway Island.
I remember those guys. I remember that whole plane full of kayak or offshore, but not kayakers so much as the
outrigger canoes.
Outrigger canoes. Yep, they were cool. That was fun. That was a great trip. I think that was our first trip to Midway.
Yeah, Jolene's a huge fisher person. She does a bunch of charters. She also works in the galley. She works on the deck on a lot of different sport boats. She's coming out on Don Hansen Day with us.
Oh, right on.
Celebrate my dad, and she just wanted to make that comment. Can you talk about that trip on your saltwater guide someday?
Oh, absolutely. Midway trips were some of the most amazing trips we've ever had. It was the most remote inhabited landmass on the planet. So just can imagine that you're flying to Kauai, and then from Kauai, you got to take another 1,200 miles out up the Acapella chain to get to the most remote inhabited landmass on the planet. And that was just beyond comprehension. And no one other than the military had been on that island since the Second World War. It was banned to all commercial traffic, all commercial airplanes, ships. Nobody could go within 200 miles of that island because it was a nuclear, we had all our nuclear weapons stashed on it. So when they opened it up to us, it was like going to Hawaii. I can imagine it would be like going to Hawaii 150 years ago, but it was just raw. I mean, we were catching 50, 60, 80-pound giant trevallies off the rocks in the bay after dinner on poppers. Let's go catch some 100-pound trevally off the rocks on poppers. It was amazing. Yeah, we'll get into that. It's pretty cool. That's a great series. I love Midway Island. Went back there 3 different times.
And just so that some of the kids that are watching today will understand, why do they call it Midway Island?
It's located halfway between the continental United States and Japan. So it got the nickname Midway Island. And actually, to be honest with you, it's shorter to fly from Alaska to Midway than it is from Los Angeles to Midway. So that sort of gives you a perspective of where it is. And it also, obviously, anybody that's studied any American history at all, it's where the Battle of Midway took place. After the Japanese attacked Midway Island on their way to Pearl Harbor. So the first American service person was killed on Midway Island prior to the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor. And then, I don't know how many months or years later, I think it was just a few months later, that the most strategic battle in the Pacific took place with the Battle of Midway, when we were able to decode some of their internal communications and codes, and we sank 3 of their battleships. And they thought they were going to hit Midway Island. It was just a completely depleted island with no defense mechanisms. We wiped their butts.
Absolutely. It's a great episode when Michael goes there the very first time. You learn a little bit about history. You learn a lot about fishing, and it is an absolute incredible. I remember the episode you guys were taking these allure giant trevally were so rabid. You guys were taking your hooks off your lures and just seeing how they would inhale these things. And it was absolutely mind-boggling.
They're eating big old 7, 8, 10-inch poppers. They're just swallowing them whole and then spitting them out. It was, and they're the junkyard dogs of the reef. I mean, they own the reef. They are fearless. And, the sharks, a lot of brown reef tip sharks are there. And while we were fishing and filming it, we had a lot of chum in the water, but the sharks would not come up above probably 20 or 30 feet in the water column, because if they got up into the feed area, the giant trevallies would actually attack them and whack them right in their gill plate and could kill them. So the sharks all stayed below the water column the entire day, until when we were getting ready to leave, somebody suggested we take the tuna carcass that we've been hanging over the side of the boat out and feed them. And I said, yeah, let's jump in and do that. We got ourselves into a lot of trouble. We could have died in a heartbeat. We were in the middle of a shark feeding frenzy, because as soon as it went crazy, the sharks just came up. The whole bottom just lifted, and we were surrounded by brown reef tip sharks. And people were screaming at us to get out of the water. We couldn't hear anything. We were laughing so freaking hard. But then all of a sudden, the sharks started coming right into the cameras. I'm beating them off with I'm hitting them with the lens of the camera, trying to get them away. And we got off the boat, and our underwater photographer, Bob Pasqua, was a retired LA fire chief. And the skipper knew he was retired. And when we got out of the water, he looked at both of us and said, I thought you were retired, not retarded. So that was before the political whatever.
Sounds like a hold my beer, watch this moment.
Yeah, exactly. And they actually use that clip in a lot of diving classes, where they show the divers what not to do in shark infested waters. So we were the examples of what not to do. But we got lucky. Nobody got hurt. And we probably, the skipper talked about it during the day on the show, that we probably could have set at least 9 to 10, if not more, IGFA records that day, if we'd wanted to kill those fish. But we decided before we even got there that we weren't going to set any records. We knew that we were catching them, and we knew that we were setting them, but we weren't going to kill the fish, because you couldn't weigh a fish at that time on board a boat. You had to have the fish weighed on dry land. I'm not sure if they've changed that since then. I think they have. But at that time, you had to weigh a fish in order for it to qualify for an IGFA world record. It had to be weighed on dried land, and we just refused to do that. So we probably let at least 10 to 12 world records go on everything from 6, 8, 10, 12-pound string all the way up to 50 and 60. So it was a trip, an excursion I'll never forget.
Yeah, none of us will. That was just some of the most amazing footage. And you're telling the story how no one had ever been there before. And you guys were the first people to really fish. I know that a lot of the people that were stationed there fish, but to really go there with the intent to fish, actual fish, and make footage, this was like the very first time ever, right?
We were the first people to have been invited to the island. We were one of the first 12 civilians to get off the plane once they opened the island up. It was amazing. The Navy spent, $30 million dismantling the naval facility there. And they tore down the buildings, and they just cleaned up the island. They went so far as to steam clean the sand under the buildings after they removed the building. So the island was immaculately returned back to almost its natural state when we got there. So it was just a phenomenal trip. And we were the first 12 civilians to be on that island. And when we got there, they said, here's your bicycle, here's a fly swatter, and enjoy yourself. But don't go over to this area over here. That's where all the nuclear weapons were stored, and we still are taking care of all that. So guess where we went as soon as we got our bikes?
Over to the place for the
right into the nuclear storage areas, and they had these big emergency showers where, if you've been radiated, hit these showers and stuff, and they got so mad at us. They go, "Get out of here!" Of course, don't go there. Okay.
Right there. Hell yeah. What's over there? We got to check that out.
Check all that out. But, it was a phenomenal trip. I told people during the whole time the island was open, if they had a chance to book a trip, to do it. And they actually turned the island over to a group of, a charter group that had set up charter fishing and ecotourism trips to help try to facilitate some income into the island. So we were there to help promote the fishing, and it was as good as anything I'd ever seen. We were trolling out in I think they had 38 Bertrams. They had a pair of 38 Bertrams and some skiffs, and we're out in one of the 38s, and we were trolling for marlin, and there was boiling. I mean, huge foamers. Like every couple hundred yards. And I kept telling the captain, I go, look at the foamers. I mean, the fish are over there. And he goes, those are all tuna. And he said, I thought you guys wanted marlin. We go, we do. And the marlin aren't mixing with the tuna. So he'd get to a foamer and he'd turn and go the other way. And he'd just drive away from the foamers without us getting bit. And after an hour or two, I said, this is crazy. Would you please go buy one of the foamers? Quadruple hookup. Everything goes off. And he goes, there you go, guys. Reel them in. we had a quadruple hookup on 200-pound tuna. Trying to and he stayed away from the foamers to try to find the marlin, which obviously we did later on. But that's how prolific that fishery was, that you were driving away from 200-pound foaming schools of bluefin to try to find blue marlin away from the bait balls.
So we got a couple of questions here. First of all, Michael, how did you get to go there in the first place? I think you just kind of summed that up because of the show you were doing, Inside Sport Fishing, and then he got, I think, and that's why they wanted him to show the world, right?
They actually were sponsored by Shimano at that time. The charter company had a relationship with Shimano, and they called Shimano and said, hey, we've got this, this new club going over at Midway Island. We'd love to have you guys come over and film it. So they called me, and we went over together to film it for it. So it actually came through Shimano, which was pretty cool.
And then did you film a episode with Kurt Gowdy and Jack Dennis?
We did. We didn't actually film it with this. Was archive footage that we got with Kurt Gowdy. And Kurt, with the what was it? Outdoor, I can't even remember the name of the show, but it was 1964, I think it launched. And he was obviously the iconic talent that we all grew up with watching, the world of, what is it? Thrill of
Wide
Victory.
World of Sports.
Yeah, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, and his fishing segments became one of the most popular segments on the Wide World of Sports, and that's when he spun off on his TV series. So we've got him coming up in a couple more episodes that are pretty phenomenal too. Kurt Gowdy was one of the coolest announcers I've ever had the pleasure of working with or seeing.
Yeah, well, that was one of the best parts about being a kid growing up, because there wasn't a lot of stuff about fishing.
There was very little. There was very, very little.
Kurt Gowdy would come on the show in the 60s and he would talk about, today we're going to be marlin fishing and and you'd be like glued to the TV. You would, as little children, we would just glued to they're talking about fishing. Oh my gosh.
It was that was one of my favorite segments in that series, and I love that whole show. Wide World of Sports was just such a great series.
And back in those days, gang, it wasn't like today where there was stuff streaming all over the place, and you would have to watch on Sunday, and you'd have to watch and you'd have to wait and see. You knew it was Wide World of Sports, but you didn't know
it's coming.
They would do surfing sometimes and they would do fishing sometimes, but you didn't know. You had to watch.
Yeah, you did, and you couldn't record it. There was no DVRs, so you had to sit there and watch it. You couldn't replay it. You're just going, "Oh my god!" And then it's over, and you're going, "I want to see it again."
And he only was on there, I think it was like 8 minutes or something.
Yeah, short
of the
segments. Short segments.
It was brutal, but it was the most watched times of TV when we were little kids. It was just so cool.
Absolutely.
And I think you and I have talked about this before. This is kind of why you did your show.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a couple of, back in the 1950s on the West Coast, they had fishing flashes, which came out of Pier Point Landing.
Yeah.
And it was a really popular show, half-hour episodes, and it was all Southern California local fishing. We've got a lot of that footage, not a lot, but some of that footage included in the history series. In fact, a 3/4 day boat out of San Pedro, they go to Catalina Island, they catch a bunch of bluefin, they run over to Santa Barbara Island, catch a bunch of rockfish, and they catch a swordfish on the way home. That's a 3/4 day trip on the Hurricane. So yeah, that and then from that show, a couple other people on the West Coast started doing some production work, and I looked at it and I said, I think we can do a better job. So I made a phone call to Shimano. I actually wrote Toyo Shimano, who was the president of Shimano Saltwater Fishing in LA or in US. I wrote him a letter and I said, I'd like to start this new fishing show in Southern California. And I'd like you guys to be involved. I'll never forget, he writes back on the end of that letter in green pen. He goes, the word involvement usually has finances involved. What do you have in mind? And so I told him, and he said, come on in, let's take a look. And he and Pfeiffer took me outside the day I got there, first thing, before we even sat down at a meeting. And they had a couple of new bass rods. And they said, hey, we want to test out these bass rods. And I went, okay, I'm just completely ignorant. And we get out of the parking lot and they start throwing. He goes, hey, you want to take a shot? And I said, sure. He said, well, see if you can hit that white line over there. So fortunately, I was able to hit it. And they said, oh, can you hit that next one down a little further? I hit that one. And I go, okay, you're good enough. Let's go. And they took me inside. So they gave me this casting test before they'd even talk to me, which I'll never forget. And it was very subtle. They didn't say, we're going to, you're going to pre-qualify you before we have a meeting. We just want to see if you can handle a rod. So when I hit the white lines a couple times in a row, they kind of smiled at each other and said, all right, you know what you're doing. Let's go in here. So, and Toyo Shimano, honestly, he was the man that started it. He was the first guy to step up for inside sport fishing and say, okay, we're in. And obviously on my first trip with Toyo on the 3/4 day trip, we were up fishing Barracuda. I had no Shimano outfit. So I had my 4/0 Newell converted pins. And he goes, what the hell are you doing with those reels? It's like, remember the day you and I were out there and you had your Okuma and stuff out there? And I went,
oh, yeah.
You got to put that shit away. We can't.
Oh, yeah.
And Toyo said the same thing. He goes, what are you doing?
You got a phone call that day.
He was on the boat. He made me put that stuff down immediately. I said, well, I don't have any Shimano. He goes, we'll take care of that, but don't put your pin stuff away. So
absolutely.
A couple of interesting tidbits about how the series got started.
Well, I'm excited for part 2, chapter 8, part 2 that we're going to watch next week. And as always, Kevin, I want you to be a part of this because Michael and I are very, very proud of this, but to have a guy that is actually in the fly fishing world, that's kind of a world that Michael and I didn't spend a lot of time in. So you bring a lot to the show.
That's actually why I stepped off screen real quick and grabbed a couple reels because I think sometimes it's hard to picture when they were talking about, creating gear that can actually handle these fish. And, when I think about it, that they're fighting these 100+ pound fish with 12-pound tippet.
Unbelievable.
That's what I use for bass.
Isn't that amazing?
Like 5-pound bass and I'm using 12-pound leader. And these guys are out here, on bamboo and tiny little tippet. But so, we kind of started out the fly fishing talk, and everyone, when you think fly fishing, everyone thinks a river runs through it. That's what everyone thinks originally. So this, so size reference, iPhone, 4-weight reel.
Tiny reel.
Right? Pretty small little thing.
100-pound fish on it.
This is a 10-weight reel, and this is like the light end of what you would use in the saltwater realm. So comparatively, they're fighting these things on these,
Yep.
and this is what we have today.
This is what you should be using. Yeah. And the fact that you're able to do that, Kevin, with that, on bamboo rods,
yeah,
and linen line is insane.
And I don't know if it'll show up real well, but this one is still got all my line from Muskie. I mean, that's a wire. I mean, that's like cable to, not mess up the teeth. And, that was the thing that I thought when they were going through that is, okay, if I hop on the back of Captain Dave's boat and we're going to go tarpon fishing, we're probably going to use something a little heavier than 12-pound line. It amazes me what the pioneers of the sport did. And I think we're so lucky now to have these incredible increases in gear and equipment.
Absolutely.
And I did take a note of it. Jason Cutler made a comment at some point in there that fly fishing looks like it, or saltwater fishing with flies looks like it's hard or challenging. And it is a very different world than fly fishing creeks or fly fishing even lakes, because you go out in some of these tarpon water and you're fighting the boat doing this, so you're trying to balance while you're trying to put a fly exactly X amount of feet in a 1 foot bucket, basically, to get it where these fish want. I mean, it's a completely different skill level, but when you make it happen, it's a completely different fight.
Oh, yeah.
Magical.
It's insane.
Magical.
Hey, Kevin, do you have one of those flies that you showed us earlier?
Yeah. So talking about the muskie and all that. So we'll see the creator of this fly in the second part of this.
Yep.
But talking about how modern equipment is different and modern gear and all that. So this is it's a musky fly, but you can use it for a ton of different things. So size reference, here's your ruler, standard 12-inch ruler. There's the fly.
Massive. Massive.
So 11 and a half inch fly. It's got two, I don't know if my light's too bright, but it's got two massive hooks in it, but you need that for the strength of the jaws and just the size of the fish that you're going after. But I joked with Captain Dave that this is right in his wheelhouse, because this thing is tied on a bunch of different shanks, and this thing will literally flip side to side as it goes through the movement on it is absolutely nuts.
And that's all hinged, the way you did that. That's all hinged.
Yeah, so these are all tied on these. So this is a hook, and that section is a hook. Everything else is on a shank.
Okay.
And so you tie the material onto the shank, and then you connect the shanks together. So like the fly that I tied, that sculpin pattern, I tied the back half of it, then connected that to the front hook, and then tied the front hook. And this is called a game changer, and it's just a long series of doing that.
But I think, Dave, you were talking last week about the passion that fly fishermen have over other anglers, and the fact that you're able to go to that degree of intimacy with you and your gear, where you can actually create and hand make the baits that you're fishing with, as well as the rods. So, I mean, it's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the, I know we've talked about it in the last couple episodes with my journey through fly fishing, but the fact that I am making my own flies and the rods that I'm using to cast with, it just gives fishing a whole new meaning, a whole new experience when you're using stuff that you created to go be successful. And I did have to write one other note while we were watching that, with, the topics of the last couple weeks and the MPAs and all that, and the statement that sport fishing saved the economy. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, guys and gals and everybody else that's watching that we didn't include in this, thank you all very, very much. I got to get going. I left my kids on the beach. This is their last day in Cabo. I want to spend it with them. I want to thank you all for watching the show today. I want to thank Kevin and Michael for being a part of this. And next week, we're watching second half of chapter 8. And so it's going to be really fun. We're going to, if any of you guys are thinking about questions that you didn't get to ask Kevin or Michael today, you can ask them next week. But for right now, Captain Dave's out. See you later.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Dave.